Okay, so in a DFENs, in actually any healthy economy, it's all about circulation. So why does a Keynesian stimulus make a difference? Because it has a multiplier effect. Why is it that you don't want to give tax breaks to the rich who sit on their money and it doesn't go down in here? Why is it bad if you have lots of businesses who are sitting on billions of profits that they won't reinvest in the real economy? Because as soon as you stop getting this circulation, and by the way, that includes circulation through education, through healthcare, through roads, and all the rest of it, you get necrosis. Basically, the bottom rots. Hit the next one. So, the American dream was actually literally true for 150 years. That is, for every decade, for the first 150 years of our democracy, the standard of living went up for the average worker until the late 1970s, when we got into trickle-down. Okay? So, it was never perfect, but there were DFENs in the US, and they did make a huge difference. So what makes a DFEN strong? Partnership bonds. You build trust. You build a reputation. You build know-how. You don't screw your neighbors. You have justice and common cause values. Robust circulation of money, information, and resources. A gentleman was talking about non-profit banking systems like they have in North Dakota, or micro loan systems. All of those are ways of getting money back to the grassroots which actually need it, which we don't do currently. Okay? Information is also essential to get to everybody. You can't have a democracy if you don't know what's really going on, what really makes an economy healthy. I mean, every time I listen to, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh this afternoon. And it's amazing the number of things he says that are just factually not true. But as long as he's saying things that are factually not true, and other people are believing him, they're going to follow that kind of thing. Right? So you literally, not only do you need to have circulation of information, you need good information circulating. You need diversity, and you need nurturing of the small. We need to incubate the small guys, because it used to be that your family and the local network would help you get on your way. Little seed capital, little contacts, those kinds of things. A lot of that has dried up. So we need to find new ways to incubate. Authentic democracy and effective learning, because if you elect people who are going to basically not care if they're poisoning your water, then you're not going to be able to survive very long. Government that serves all the people in the health of the whole, but here's the last one. Proper balance of wealth and power with restraints and excess on the top, which we're going to see in a minute. There's literal reasons why too big is a problem. So what helps? Progressive taxation and the rich paying their fair share, developing local networks with high synergy and multiplier effects, nonprofit community banking systems like North Dakota, a diverse high-integrity media, empowering public education, and triple bottom line businesses with fair wages and good benefits. You will notice that I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm just showing how all these little pieces come together and why all these things there's better ways that have been bubbling up for the last 20 years. They're part of a whole picture. Okay. One of my little research groups have come up with this new measure of economic vitality. It's based on actual research in ecosystems. And so, that business about you got to have the proper balance between big and little, and actually have to have it at every stage of development. Well, it turns out that in natural systems, there's a window of vitality. That is, you can have a few Tyrannosaurus rexes up there. But if you have too many Tyrannosaurus rexes, they're going to kill the whole thing. That's basically the idea here, too. Or the other, I like to point out that this works in all sorts of systems. So many of you know that New Orleans was sinking long before the hurricane because they had built these large canals down there. And the large canals, of course, sucked all the dirt out from underneath New Orleans because they were out of balance with the little wetlands. So even in a river system, if you have too many big guys, they'll destroy the little guys and you're in trouble. So you can actually literally measure whether your economy is in a healthy state or not. Okay, so why is it bad to be too big? Because there's this thing in engineering they call a positive feedback loop, which is basically the more you have, the more you get. Okay? True in the sinking of New Orleans, the big canal, the more water is flowing down it, the more water was pulling through it. Just the way it works. Okay? But when that happens in economics, what you find is the subprime mortgage loop, which is you got big investors and big banks and lobbyists and government officials and real estate brokers all going, how can I make more money? Well, let's do homes, right? Let's do mortgages. And we'll, you know, the more you have, the more you get. There's selection that goes on this kind of thing. So that if you can find a clever way for them to earn more money doing this, like the ninja loans, no income, no job kinds of things, or if you can chop them up into little pieces and sell them abroad all over the place so that they can make even more money, you're going to do it. And so they'll get better and better and better and better at this because they have the resources and the energy to do it. And what will it do? It'll suck up all the resources from the owners, and they will have a very large bubble. And then when it goes bust, they go, I don't understand. We were making maximum profit, and that's what, according to trickle-down, we should be doing, right? But of course, what you've done is you've had powerful pull that eroded, and I have to emphasize this a lot. They actually literally erode the grassroots economy, which we're going to see in a second. So that it's not just that you got a bubble, it's that you got a bubble over an economy that's incredibly weak because they've sucked up all the resources, so that you can't get a loan anymore, so that you can't get a house anymore, so that you're out of work, so that, you know, you're not contributing anymore.
I'd like to comment on that slide.
Okay.
So there should also be the home building industry in there,
Yeah.
which is part of it. But one of the things that occurred that created the collapse is that we went away from localization of money and capital that could be available in your local town. The S&Ls were pretty much driven out.
Right.
And so when she has the big investors and the big banks up there, what occurred is not just in residential development, but also in commercial development, there became a standardization of design as to what the investors would fund because they're all sold to big insurance companies and mutual funds, so forth and so on. So there's a checklist. So if you wanted to build kind of a funky building over here on MLK that might have had solar in it or something else, they wouldn't fund it because it wouldn't fit the checklist. And that was occurring not just in residential market, but also in the commercial market, which is why every town in America looks like every other town. Because they only want to fund a few things that they know are going to give them their internal rate of return and their ROI, right? And consequently, it's dumbed down America, and it's created the situation where all we ever get are strip malls and certain times architecture that don't actually fold into the landscape and aren't actually taking advantage with what the natural features are in Chapel Hill or maybe Santa Fe or Chicago where I was raised, etc. So that's a very important slide because unfortunately that has not been broken.
Right.
They have not really changed those standards even today.
It's like monoculture agriculture.
It's
Yes,
very
it's
similar.
exactly like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like.
It's like Monsanto.
That came from the securitization.
Correct.
That's what drove that.
Yes.
Okay, so this comes from my friend Bernard Leotard, who is, we call him Bernard the Belgian banker. He's one of the co-architects of the euro, and he's trying to, in fact, he has a new book out called Money and Sustainability, the Missing Link. Also another one called New Money for a New World, because he's seen the inside of this system, and it's really scary and crazy. But, okay, so, from 1980 to 2010, the height of trickle-down, this is the growth of the speculative economy. This is Wall Street gambling, this is currency exchanges and derivatives and all those fine things, and this is the real economy. Now notice, GDP was growing great during all of that. And the economy, real economy, was crumbling, basically. All right, you want to do this one? So, Elizabeth Warren, everybody know Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah.
Yay, okay, I heard Elizabeth Warren for the first time on the Daily Show, when she said, now, this is almost a quote, well, every 15 to 20 years in American history there was a panic until we passed Glass-Steagall. And then it stopped. It stopped for 50 years until we got to Reagan deregulation. What had happened right after we did Reagan deregulation? We got the savings and loan crisis. What happened when we had the savings and loan crisis? They all went belly up, and what had happened? The big banks absorbed them. So they reinflated the bubble, only bigger. Because we now no longer have those little diversity guys. You know, It's a Wonderful Life, and what's his name, Jimmy Stewart. George. George isn't there anymore. Clarence.
The angel is gone.
Clarence and George aren't there anymore, and they're all up in Goldman Sachs and those kinds of things. And so, yes, it's true that we really did need TARP, because I couldn't show it because I didn't have data, but the year before they passed Glass-Steagall was the highest number of bank failures of 4,000 in U.S. history, and this whole part before that was just this gigantic sea of red. Now, the numbers wouldn't be as high because we've gotten rid of large numbers of small banks. But the big ones, when they go under, you would have no monetary system.
Sally, could you go back to the last slide
Okay,
again?
Steve.
You mean, can Steve go back to the last slide? Let's see. We'll see.
Now, look,
There we go.
people really should get familiar with this slide because it's not that well understood exactly how large the speculative economy is. And that's what Warren Buffett was talking about weapons of mass destruction, essentially derivatives, and anyone else has been highly critical of derivatives, collateralized debt obligations, since synthetic collateralized debt obligations that were all created since 1997. The issue here is the reason Wall Street still makes so much money is all you have to do is figure out what their commission is on the daily exchanges. And they don't make much money on funding the normal economy here.
Right.
That's why they've created this shadow economy, which is now approaching $4,000 billion, $4 trillion a day.
A day?
A day in
A day.
trade.
Oh, my heaven.
So you see, their incentive is not to fund things that we're doing out here.
And also that huge volume illustrates that it's pure gambling. It has nothing to do with any real economic activity because you can't have $4 trillion a day of real economic activity. It doesn't exist.
Right.
No, it doesn't,
It's all gambling.
because we
Okay.
don't
And
even
debt.
have the M1 money supply in America. The slide we saw yesterday, Bernard, was there's $6 trillion in actual M1 that's in banks, hard money. So in fact, that's all phantom money, that's all electrons.
Vapor wealth.
Yeah.
So it's
everywhere.
It's vapor wealth, yes, but people, that slide needs to be shown to more and more people, because you can see where we were in '07, and it's just gotten worse.
You all need to go to Gamblers Anonymous. Seriously, it's an addiction. It's
It is
crazy.
absolutely an addiction.
It's really
Go ahead.
out of control.
Did not want to. Okay, so, and what's the best way to make money? Invest in buying politicians. I was just hearing that on,
Yesterday.
this was NPR
NPR
a couple of days ago. Yeah. I mean, they're actually now advertising what you can get on return on your investment, so that they go directly to a company, say, buy this politician and your return on investment's likely to be blah. And of course, and they're all hooked into it now, which is why Citizens United, we gotta get rid of it. Anyway. Okay, and that's why these things collapse, because that positive feedback, more you have, more you get, applies to the government and the economy, and it will suck it all up, and you will, it's bad. The next one. So, what makes them fail? Excessive concentrations of wealth and power. Insufficient diversity and poor incubation, poor circulation, poor learning, suppression in better ways, brittle cultural bonds. So all that business about fear-mongering, yeah.
I came in late, could you redefine DFENs, please?
Democratic Free Enterprise Networks.
Thank you.
One of the things that Occupy and the left in general needs to do is not buy into the wedge issues. So don't call everybody a racist if they just disagree with you, because that alienates lots of people, and that's what will break down our society. All right. So, what harms? Tax breaks for the rich and bailout for the bigs, because it's just more concentration at the top. Deregulation of corporations and removal of antitrust laws, union busting, outsourcing, wage and benefit reductions and foreclosures, because the more desperate your working people get, the lower wages they'll take, and da-da-da-da-da. That's why they let all the Mexicans come in from over there, because it'll help drive down and create more desperate, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Privatization of the commons, slashing education, media concentration, distortion. These are all things we know of, because they're all very effective at maximizing profit for the 0.01%. Okay. We all know Jared Diamond, who wrote the book Collapse. You know, my favorite quote from him is, he ponders what the Easter Islander was thinking when he chopped down the last pine tree, or pardon me, palm tree. He must have known that the loss of this vital resource was going to be deadly for his society. But he did it anyway, because he was in the momentum of your cultural assumptions, right? You got your elites, and they got credentials, and they got power, and they got prestige, and everybody looks up to them, and so what do I know? I'm a poor schmuck here, right? So we go ahead and we chop it down. What are the other things that we're doing, like chopping down the last? We're fracking, and we're desperate enough, and we think those guys, those economists, really know what they're talking about. So
selling the right to collect on the fines for people who run stoplights.
there you go. Right? So this is my favorite quote from his: "Societies aren't murdered; they commit suicide. They slit their wrists, and over the course of many decades, stand by and passively watch themselves bleed to death." And that's what we're doing now. I mean, and things like 350.org and global warming and all these things are efforts to say, wait a second, we're killing ourselves. We got to come together on it, because we're fundamentally, I mean, the root cause of all of it is economic. So it'll take us 1,000 years to, if we keep responding to each of the billions of crises that are caused by this, we'll never do it. So let's see. So it's now Randy's time. So how do we grow healthy defense?
This is your local entrepreneurs and your local people. When I think of entrepreneurs, I think of everyone in this room. It's not just about creating wealth per se, but wealth is a big idea. Like protecting the environment is very valuable. In fact, the environment is more valuable than the GDP, if you actually had to put a value on it. I mean, getting involved with the people that care about your community and getting them to care about community. Creating public-private partnerships, really, that's a buzzword that everyone uses, but the real thing you're talking about is a willingness for your local governments to actually take risks and do things differently that they haven't done before. And it just takes people willing to do that. And for example, the town recently in Pittsburgh decided to do a building reuse program, which we've never done before. And you know, to get people that are elected to do things that they've never done before is quite challenging. Which means that the town is actually going to work with the rural center and be the intermediary and invest money in a building that has been vacant for a long time. Get this, and what we're going to do is get solar panels put in there, make it more energy efficient, make it more useful for future people to come in there.
There's no in between.
There's no in between?
No.
It's either
That
on or
sounds
off.
like our country.
But there is an in-between, and it's already being made. I mean, Guy Perovitz wrote a book recently called America Beyond Capitalism,
Yeah.
and he describes the millions of worker-owned enterprises and community-based financing structures, and And I don't know if they would fit the DFENs definition, but that is something that already exists, and it's massive and everywhere.
All right.
It's just that people don't see it.
Well,
They
and they
don't.
don't have a name for it, too.
And they haven't been willing to conceive. For instance,
Yeah.
governments run reserve balances. So I don't know what it is for Orange County, but in Pittsburgh, when I got into office, our reserve balances were over 100%. I mean, which is like way out of, we had some very conservative, kind of Scrooge-like guys in it forever that didn't really spend money unless they had to. But consequently, we had enough money to run the town if we didn't collect taxes for 2 years. It was interesting. I mean, you could essentially, we could just keep on going for 720 days if we had collected $0. But that money should actually go to work with your people. And I'm trying to get them to this idea that we would be able to lend some of that money in the community and make back a very small return. Carborough has done a similar type of thing, but every community should be doing that. And it would be even stronger if we had that pension money repaid, back in your communities. I mean,
Yeah, because
that's another one. CDs for local investment from local banks. I now know that Piedmont Biofuels, I'm sure you've all heard of Piedmont Biofuels in Pittsburgh, they're actually going to be doing a program where they're going to have a CD in a local bank where you can actually go in and invest in it, and some of it will go to them. Like Harrington Bank's going to be doing that. Michael had actually flipped me the book, and they talked about, the bank in North Dakota. The true reason that North Dakota is so wealthy, beside the fact it's swimming in gas and in oil, is actually they control their finances. They're the only state that does, and that's the real source of their wealth when you go back and look at the numbers.
And they invest in their own state. I mean, that's what that bank is all about, investing in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm. Every one of those are forms of DFENs. I mean, another example of a Democratic Free Enterprise Network are your water and sewer networks. So how many people here are on a municipal water system? Okay? How many times have you heard people say that we want to privatize the system for various logic, which they've done all over the world? Well, what happens when you privatize the system?
The price goes through the roof.
And the quality
Yes.
goes down.
And do you actually have a democratic voice
No.
in the quality of your water, the price you pay for your water and sewer access? No. So I'll give you, in chat, right in Pittsburgh, we have both working right now, which is fascinating. Pittsburgh is a private system. We've had challenges with water historically because we get it from the Hog River, and the Hog River had been polluted from Burlington on down. Now our water is better than it's ever been, which is great. We sell our water to Aqua America, who puts it into Chapel Ridge, which is a golf course community with nice big houses. Now they buy our water wholesale and mark it up 4 times, and the poor people in Chapel Ridge have no recourse because we can't do anything for them. It's gone through the valve into their tank. So it's not democratic or free. They're stuck with whatever deal that they have living there. Our citizens in Pittsburgh could come and say, we want you to do this, that, or we're going to vote you out, or we want an input. So that's a very definition of a democratic free enterprise network, because we run those funds like a business, and they make a profit, and this makes a profit, yet we're not in business to make a profit. We're in business to try to make the water better.
I would like to point out another thing about getting money. So one of the things that the Greater Pittsburgh CDC is trying to do is aggregate local capital for local investment. And one of our first things is we're investing in affordable housing in Pittsburgh through a nonprofit called Grit Capital, who has a long track record. And so basically, I now have I call it a CD, but it's a promissory note actually. But I'll get 6% 1 year, I'll get 6% return, and then if I want to, I can reinvest. And I'd much rather do that than send my money off to Wall Street and have heart palpitations as it goes up, it goes down, it goes down. So we'd like to encourage this kind of thing. Invest in your local communities and things that you'd like to see happen, like affordable housing.
What most people don't realize, because your brokers don't tell you this, is you can do something called a self-directed IRA, where you can direct your money where you want it to go, as long as as long as you don't touch it, you know, so you won't pay the penalty until after 59 and a half, but essentially, you work with something called like equity trust, which is a qualified intermediary. You can do this stuff. The law provides for it, but they don't really tell you can do it. There's a lot of things the law provides for, but most citizens don't know about it. Ergo, the money stays centralized, and so what Sally showed in those first slides is it stays concentrated and it moves like that big shark or whale, and everything below it dies. You know, because you don't have the investment. I was in construction development design. I built a green development in Pittsburgh with my wife Leslie. I have plenty of assets, but I can't get a loan from banks. This entire recession, they say you have to have great cash flow. You have to have a great balance sheet. I said, if I had great cash flow and a great balance sheet, why would I need you? What would I come to you for? This is the problem all of us face. The banks are no longer in the business to put capital on the street so that you can actually do something with it. Because they're doing the speculative economy and taking very safe investments and avoiding local. Because it's too aggravating for them to do a lot of loans. They would rather do big plays, big tranches of capital.
Another question?
Why is it necessary to have the big sharks? And
That's a good question.
what would be the characteristics of a responsible big shark?
Well,
That's your question, Sally.
there was a reason they used to have antitrust laws, and getting rid of the antitrust laws. I mean, so in theory, you need big guys to do big things. Like you need a government to build an interstate highway system, okay? Because you have to concentrate a lot of assets in order to do something like that. I mean, that's why we pay taxes to a central place and do all these kinds of big things. There are other big kinds of things that you would need to do that kind of thing. If you want to create infrastructure for your telecommunications system, even if it's private. So there are reasons to have big things, you know, big corporations. The problem is that, if once they have access to your political system, so that we don't control them anymore, they now control us, which is the root problem of corporate person. And B, if they're allowed to get too big. If they get too big, then they're going to influence you, even if they don't have direct impact on you know, money in the political system. So I mean, but it's sort of important because I did a lot with progressives for a while, and we had a few pretty serious communists, right, who were anti any profit. Well, but then you kind of go, how are you going to run this? How are you going to run an economy? Those kinds of things. So there's somewhere between all profit is bad, all big is bad, all hierarchy is bad, all military is bad. There's all of these things that you can throw the baby out with the bathwater, where in fact what you really need is just to A, restrain them, and B, change their corporate culture. So I think that the way you have the good guys is to do the living company kind of thing. So right now, in many ways their hands really are tied, because there really are laws that say you have to maximize profit for the owners, basically. And you know, you'll hear the CEO shall always say this. Well, I'm sympathetic with what you do, but if I stop, you know, pumping oil in Nigeria or wherever, then they'll just get rid of me and they'll put somebody else who may be worse. Right? And there's some truth to that. So we've got to change the laws that govern corporate behavior. Because corporations, so they are sharks. They do exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said this. They do exactly what they're meant to do. They maximize profit for the owners very efficiently. We just got to have them maximize the well-being of that corporation. Which, by the way, maximizing profit does not maximize the health of the company.
So I guess what Sally's saying is, instead of great white sharks, they should become nurse sharks, or benefit corporations that aren't going to kill you.
Yeah.
Taking something as simple as solar, which everyone here has some understanding. We have different companies now doing it in North Carolina. If you had a policy, for instance, at the county level, where we said all new commercial and residential buildings are going to have so much solar on them, and they're going to orient themselves to maximize this. And in doing this, we're going to give you some type of credit when you get your building permit, because people in my industry loathe paying those fees up front, because you know, they like to, they'll pay them, but up front's always hard. Then you could probably get that trade-off. And then you'd say, okay, I have Siler City in Chatham County, which has 600,000 square feet of available manufacturing space and thousands of workers that are partially trained, many brought here and lured to work in chicken factories, but want to stay here because they like North Carolina, and now their kids are American citizens. And there are plenty of also American citizens there as well. You say, okay, I've got the community college system is now doing sustainability, and they actually have a curriculum. I can train these people in Siler City, Pittsboro, Sanford, and in Lillington and Harnett County, okay? So I train them how to install and work with solar and the smart grid. I use that manufacturing space to make these, because as Bob Kingery of Southern Energy Management told me, you can actually order the component parts made in America and save about 15 to 20% if you just assemble them. Okay, so we could actually have an industry in our county if we had a policy at the top driving the usage, not just on new construction, but also on probably retrofits and on county and city governments where you can, people are starting to do this. So I first popped this idea out to you, I think last year, and I've been thinking about it before, but leasehold interest actually would allow somebody to get these tax credits and would allow them to get the depreciation, because of course you know local and governments and nonprofits can't use depreciation. It's not an advantage to them, but you can if you actually have the leasehold interest. So you could create this whole network where you're doing local manufacturing for good jobs, creating green electrons, taking people that were working in an industry that's being shut down, like chicken plants, and put them to work doing something else. And you could tie in this local investment with self-directed IRAs or a local mutual fund. That diagram shows you how it can work. And then of course you have the UNC Sustainable Business students. They're also out there in the MBA program that are interested in this too. It can all tie in together. All the policies are there right now. Now, that people are doing this in in pieces, but it would be wonderful if everyone actually did it as one coherent, democratic free enterprise network. And that is a diagram of one that can work. And they're doing it right now, but they're not all doing it together. And that's just an issue of getting these silos broken down and explaining, hey, why this would work and what it would mean.
And
What's a silo?
Yeah,
Define silo, please.
Okay, silo, like, when you're living in the Midwest where I grew up and I'm dumping all the corn in there, or I put a missile in there, which they don't do anymore, but in any case, when you sit on boards like affordable housing, everyone just talks about, let's build these houses, but then nobody talks about, oh, we should locate them near a transit line. Oh, and by the way, we should build them green, so they should be healthy, so these people that are making 25% to 80% of median income can actually afford health coverage. Oh, and maybe I should think about something like energy, because if I build a really crappy house, but I locate it and they can afford to live in it, but now the power bill is $300 a month. So what I've said to these people on the boards I sit on is, get rid of these silos and start thinking holistically and connect it all so that your energy, your transportation, your money, where they're working are all together. Otherwise, what? And your food, local grown food. So it should all be networked.
Yeah, so I was going to point out that the, what is it, I forgot the name, Piedmont Food and Agricultural Center, the processing center. So it's an example of incubating small local businesses to help the food supply, working on organic. You could do the same thing with medicine. This would be a perfect place to get some research, link it up with public health kinds of things, and you can do all sorts of astounding things if you just consciously start working on these.
You guys make a great team, I gotta say, and it's been a